Yeah. Hip hop and jazz. Yeah. Yeah. Hip hop and jazz. Yeah. What? Jazz, hip hop, bond like fusion. Slow grooving sounds that get the crowd moving. So for your amusement, we come to play a little Kenny G, a little Miles D, a little Sade. I get busy when I listen to Dizzy, and relax when I hear Coltrane on sax. In fact, I feel my loneliness with keys from Thelonious Monk anytime, day or night, week or month. So don't try to front like it's something you don't want. It's jazz music, y'all. Yeah. It's jazz music.
I can play this groove here all night long, cause it makes me wanna move my feet. I really love my jazz when it's played with the hip hop beat.
Hip hop and jazz.
The rhythm's got me moving, grooving, all up in this song.
Hip hop and jazz, what?
Add a little hip hop flavor,
Jazz
makes me wanna listen to it all night long.
See, I'm not into fashion, but I like my Louis. Don't follow hoops, but I do follow Duke Ellington. Remember when music had soul? Vinyl wax seemed every track solid gold. You hold a firm place in my memory. I hear the strings ring, hear Ella sing, that's chemistry. Simply melodic, erotic to my temple. Complex tones made simple. It's jazz
I can play
music.
this groove here all night long, cause it makes me wanna move my feet. I really love my jazz when it's played with the hip hop beat.
Hip hop and jazz.
The rhythm's got me moving, grooving, all up in this song.
Yeah.
Add a little hip hop flavor, makes me wanna listen to it all night long.
Hip hop and
Makes me
jazz.
wanna move all night. Makes me wanna groove all night. Makes me wanna move all night. Makes me wanna groove all night.
Yeah. You feel that?
Yeah.
I know you like Najee to come move your body a time or two. You forget, so I'm reminding you. Truth is, jazz is hip hop's roots. If you need proof, you can listen to the loops. The fruits of labor, visions from jazz musicians, created compositions for all ears to listen. I think of all the legends of jazz that passed, and know that heaven got one hell of a band. Yeah, it's jazz
I can play
music.
this groove here all night long, cause it makes me wanna move my feet. I really love my jazz when it's laid with
Come
the
on,
hip
I
hop
feel that
beat.
jazz, y'all.
The rhythm's got me moving, grooving, all up in this song.
Feel that jazz, y'all.
Add a little hip hop flavor,
Come on.
makes me wanna listen to
Yeah,
it all
it
night
feel
long.
good, don't it?
They can play this groove here all night long, cause it makes me wanna move my
Check
feet.
it out, check it out.
I really love my jazz when it's played with the hip hop beat.
Yeah.
The rhythm's got me moving, grooving, all up in this song.
Hip hop and jazz.
Add a little hip hop flavor, makes me wanna listen to it all night long.
Jazz and hip
They
hop.
can play this groove here all night long, cause it makes me wanna move my feet.
Hip hop and jazz.
I really love my jazz when it's played with the hip hop beat.
They go together. It's
The
like
rhythm's
yeah.
got me moving, grooving, all up in this song.
It feel good, don't it?
Add a little hip hop flavor, makes me wanna listen to it all night long.
Hip hop and jazz. They go together. They go together. It's like hip hop and jazz. Yeah. Hip hop and jazz. Yeah. Goes together. Yeah. It goes together. It just goes together. Yeah. It's jazz and hip hop. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that jazz, baby.
Makes me wanna groove.
Yeah. Hip hop and jazz. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve James, fellow Oak Parker. It's my pleasure tonight to host this conversation with three really very interesting and compelling candidates. We have joining us tonight Anthony Clark. We have Nwanta Griffin and Chibuike Enya. Hi, guys. Anthony, I think you're on mute. And Nwanta, you're on mute.
Hello. Hello, Steve.
There you go. Hi, how you doing?
In class all the time. I still forget to unmute myself.
So before we start, I'm going to say a little bit about me because, you know, it's always about me. Anthony knows that from when we made America to Me. But I want to say a little bit about me and what brought me to tonight. I'll keep it really short, but I'll start with an embarrassing admission, which is I've never voted in a trustee election. And these three guys didn't know that, or they might not have let me host this tonight, but this is going to be my first. And why is that? I don't really have a good answer except to say that when my wife and I moved here 36 years ago, before we had kids, we've had our family here. We've been here ever since. I think we saw Oak Park as a kind of like a cool place to live that was practical for us because she was working in Bolingbrook and downtown Chicago. She had two different jobs. And so we had heard that Oak Park was this very, oops, let me turn off my thing. We'd heard that Oak Park is this really kind of, you know, cool, diverse community, liberal. And people told us, if you're not going to live in the city, you have to live in either Evanston or Oak Park. And so Oak Park seemed like the place for us, given my wife's job situation. And so that's how we ended up here. And I think one of the first things we noticed about Oak Park was how many rules there are here, and lots of fines if you don't do things right. And you know, when Oak Park came out with its catchphrase, what was it? Oak Park, step out of line. Remember that some years ago? That was a catchphrase for Oak Park. My addition to that was Oak Park, step out of line, pay a fine. Because if you do anything wrong in this town, that could happen. So I loved living here. It may not sound like it, but I've loved living here. But I've always had a kind of kept Oak Park at a bit of an arm's length. It was a place I lived and felt some pride in living here, but I was more focused on the city of Chicago and on the work that I was doing that mostly took me into the city of Chicago. And all that changed when we did America to Me some years ago. And it was at that point in time that I sort of came to a realization that I wanted to do something more in my backyard and look at this community. And that was inspired, and I'm not going to get into the details of that because I'm already talking too long, but when, you know, I wanted to get into these issues of race and equity and how they play out in Oak Park, having sort of had three kids come through the school system here. And then I kind of thought, after I did America to Me, I've kind of done my part. Honestly, I thought, well, you know, I did that. Now I can go back and do other stuff. But it kind of gnawed at me that I was, you know, like I'm proud of what we did with that series, but it kind of gnawed at me. It's like, no, that's not real active engagement going forward, just to be able to say you did that series. And so that's why I'm here tonight. I've kind of discovered over the last couple of years that I need to be more actively a part of this community, of my community. And that has sort of, you know, led me to where I'm at tonight. I'm clearly not a political authority of Oak Park. And I look at this conversation as a chance to get to know some folks that I've gotten to know recently, and one that I've known for a bit longer, Anthony. And hopefully through me getting to know them, you folks will get to know them too. I know you'll have questions. We'll get to those later in the conversation. But first, let's start by us having a bit of a conversation. And my first question to each of you, and I don't care which one of you goes first, although if you want me to pick, I will, is all of you have been here a long time, a very long time. So what's a story from your youth or your adulthood, what's a story about you that speaks to why you love this community and why you've stayed here? Who wants to go first? Who wants to kick it off? All right, brave man.
So I'll start off. It's a little bit of a story. It doesn't even necessarily have me as the heart of the story. It actually has Anthony as the heart of the story. So yeah. So growing up, actually, Anthony lived one block away from me. So I grew up on the 1000 block of Lombard. Very similar to Wanta and Anthony. I came here at a very young age. I was 4 when I got to Oak Park. And like you, Stephen, my parents were super, super excited about getting out of the city, but having a place that was diverse, inclusionary, and where you could be the best version of you. And my dad just wanted so much for myself and my 3 older brothers to be able to be whoever we were, but to also know that, you know, this education system is enough. This community is going to be enough to lift you guys up and to make you feel proud of where you're from, but also to get you where you need to be in life. And that was what my dad would always say when we would go to college. He would sit down with my friend. I went to college with one of my best friends, and he would always say that to us. He'd just say, you need to get this education, because in order to fight in life, you're going to have something that they can't take away from you, and that's your education. They can never take that away from you. But one thing I don't think my parents ever really pushed hard was, they did push on mentors and having coaches and people in life. But I remember going to an assembly when I was younger. I don't know if Anthony remembers this assembly where there was a Superman costume. And I see Anthony coming down, just running down the aisles of the field house at OPRF. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, and I'm a freshman, so, you know, I see it and I'm like, oh man. And I'm kind of like in awe. And I see this like superhero. He's wearing a superhero costume, got Superman on. And it's this guy. And I didn't know that later in life he would be the superhero for Oak Park. But seeing stuff like that was what kind of inspired me. It made me so cool to see someone do something like that, but also seeing it years later, the person that he ended up becoming. It's like every day he steps out into being that role. And like you said, you want to be more involved in the community and make sure you're doing enough. And when I see people like Anthony, it reminds me that I need to do more, because he does everything he possibly can with every breath. I need to make sure that I'm doing enough as well for my family, the family that I'm raising here. This generation is now passed on to my son, and I'm hoping that he feels the same pride in wanting to come back to this Oak Park and to make something great here, because having inspiration and something that's actually here rather than something, you know, wishing, you know, upon a LeBron James or something. We have heroes that are right here in our own hometown that fight the good fight every day and make me want to put on a Superman costume and get to work.
Okay, well, I'd like to see that Superman costume. I think
I don't know. I don't think you do. I don't think you do. In high school, I was about 70 pounds and 6'1", about 70 pounds.
So what made you think you could pull that off? But I do want to get to your story. I'm just curious.
No, definitely. You know, I mean, that took me aback. You know, I'm extremely humbled and, you know, honored that you would even, you know, consider me in that light. And, you know, though we, you know, never really knew each other in high school, you know, I'm so thankful that we know each other now. And, you know, through this fight and struggle, we've become family. So I truly appreciate that. And of course, Wanta, you and I have been family for a long time. You are my sister. And Steve, you know, with your excellent work with America to Me, you and I became connected. So I truly appreciate it. And even before that, I was a fan of yours with Hoop Dreams, which helped to, you know, scope my youth. So I truly appreciate everything that you do and taking time out of your schedule to be here this evening, and everyone that's watching. So I had to crack up because honestly, you know, and I feel like it's important. You know, I own my truth and truly feel that vulnerability is extremely important, because it not only helps ourselves, but it can often help others. And for me, moving to this community, or my family, Ryan and Blanche, love my family, you know, my parents, they're my best friends. When they moved here at the age of 5, I was an introvert. I was an extremely quiet child. But what happened throughout the years, because I go to therapy. I truly believe in therapy. My mental health walk. I identified that my bold personality, it started from a defense mechanism. Because when I first moved to this community, I went to First Baptist, then I went to St. Edmunds, before ending up going to public schools. And I was picked on, because again, I was different oftentimes, particularly in St. Edmunds. I was one of the few Black students in that school. So my personality changed in a sense, and I became the individual that wanted to make people laugh, because I felt like if I made people laugh, then at least they weren't laughing at me, if that made sense. Hopefully they would be laughing with me, and I could disarm them with my personality, because it was extremely difficult trying to figure out my identity as a young Black kid, in this community, when you didn't see a lot of representation or celebration of your identity in this community that you love. So that's what's so funny to me thinking back to that, because I was a terror in school. I was a super class clown. I remember that costume. Oh my goodness. And I actually, and she forgot this, I had one rollerblade on. I don't know why I had one rollerblade on, but literally came in, cape waving on one rollerblade, and just I terrorized OPRF high school. So it's so funny when I came back as a teacher, because a lot of the teachers that are still there, or security and staff, they're like, "Oh hell no, Anthony's back. You're a teacher now." But no, being vulnerable, that's why I had that bold personality, and that's why I was a class clown, because it was a way for me to disarm others while I was still uncomfortable with myself and my own identity. But in reference to what she stated about, being a superhero, I don't consider myself a superhero. I consider myself more of a Lois Lane. There are supermen, women, and they, and I'm more of the Lois Lane type. Like, I'm a supportive role. I'm the sidekick, and Lois wasn't necessarily a sidekick. Lois was bad. Lois did her thing. But there's so many people that make what I do possible, because this is not an I thing. This is a we thing. And I truly believe that nonprofits shouldn't have to exist, right? This philanthropic work that we do, this mutual aid work that we are engaged in Oak Park and beyond, it shouldn't have to exist. But based upon the national and local issues, the systemic interconnected issues that exist, the people often have to step up to bridge the gap left by local and federal governments. And we've stepped up. The way my parents, Ron and Blanche, raised me, it's always been to utilize the privilege and power that you have to help others. Because if you can't move forward as a collective, then what's the point? And I have a level of privilege being able to grow up in Oak Park, and having the education that I've had, and being able to travel and gain so many different experiences in life. And I just want to say, whoever's watching and not watching, from the bottom of my heart, I truly thank the community, Chi, Wanta, Steve, and everyone else that has enabled Suburban Unity Alliance, and just the various efforts that I've wanted to collaborate and be involved in to take place. So I know that was long-winded, so I'm going to end it, because I would love to hear from Wanta, my sis, and what she has to share. But I think one quick story outside of that, what she shared, I remember being young and telling my parents that I was going to move away and never come back to Oak Park. Like, that was in my mind. When I initially moved to Atlanta outside of high school, ended up getting into a little trouble, as a youth, trying to find myself, and ended up going into the military, which I call the poverty draft, because often they offer up free education, free housing, employment, and they trap you sometimes and entice you. I didn't think I was coming back to Oak Park, but I never regret entering into the military. Though I'm 100% against war and the military industrial complex, I'm glad that I had that experience, because it exposed me to so many different communities and cultures, whether abroad or locally. And Oak Park is unique. Oak Park and communities like Evanston, they don't exist throughout this country. You can't find an Oak Park throughout America. So when I learned that and began to mature, I was like, I'm about to move back to Oak Park after I was medically discharged honorably due to a disability. I was like, I'm coming back to Oak Park. I'm coming back to give back to the community that I thought I would never come back to, because it's unique. And that's why we're here. That's why we're running, because there's so many different communities, right, that recognize the issues that exist. They can easily step back and call out a systemic issue, but not every community has the opportunity to address those issues. Not every community has an opportunity to go past just treating symptoms and address root cause issues. And we haven't necessarily gotten to that point, but we have the ability to. And when you love something like we love this community of Oak Park, you expect the best from it. Just like if you're in a personal relationship, so on and so forth, you expect the best of your partner. And we're in a partnership with the Oak Park community. And I truly believe that if we continue to be invested, we have an opportunity to make change. And that's why I moved back here.
That's great. Yeah, I just before you jump in, Wanta, I just want to say it's like, doing America to Me actually made me love the community more, even though I was seeing it in a much more critical and fuller light than I ever understood it to be. But it did make me love the community more, which certainly has fed my desire to be more active in it. So, Wanta, what about you?
What was the question? I mean, we didn't went on all kind of rant about Superman and whatnot. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, what was the question? What was a story or something? I remember there being a story or something.
So, yeah, the original, no, you're right to ask again. The original question was, tell us a story about growing up here or as an adult here that speaks to what you love about this community and why you've stayed here.
Okay, so I guess my story, the story that made me love Oak Park and why I chose to stay here was much like Anthony. I was sort of an active youth. No.
That's what we're using, active? Okay.
I was active. I've always been a taller and a bigger girl. In sixth grade, I was 5'8", 145 pounds, and I was in sixth grade. So I've always been bigger than most of the kids in my grade, and that didn't stop when I got to high school. I just kept getting taller and bigger, and I deflected from people teasing me about my size by being this really big personality. Right? Either I'm going to laugh at myself, or I'm going to make someone else laugh, or I'm going to lead in some capacity. And I just chose to lead and to just be myself. So I was never afraid of anything. I was never afraid of anyone. So having size kind of made me not only fearless, but I just was able to be myself. And so when I got to high school, of course, when you have size, people try you. I'm the wrong person to try. And I ended up being on the 4th floor of high school, and everyone knows where the 4th floor is. It's the on-campus department. I had a little behavior. I was labeled behavior disorder resource. And so I had some anger management issues, but I had great teachers, right? I had a fabulous support system, and they were able to see past all of the rough exterior, all of the hardness, and they were able to get to the core of who I am and the things that I love and bring those talents out of me. So they had me auditioning for everything at the high school, and Mr. Collins, Niall Collins, put me in several writing contests and introduced me to literature and things of that nature. And I just started writing. And in doing that, they asked me this is my story. I'm going into my story now. I don't want to be long-winded. There was a Martin Luther King Oratorical Essay Award contest. And I was able to win that contest twice. And part of winning the contest is you have to go in front of your class, the entire student body of OPRF, and say this speech about Martin Luther King. And that's when I found I connected with leadership, that I could be a leader, that people would follow me. Now, I was in a fight the next year and I got kicked out of school, so I didn't say my speech, These things happen. And in doing that, in fact, I could have said the speech, but I didn't feel that I should say the speech because I had, I had some issues. But Oak Park is where I learned how to protest. It's where I learned how to lead. It's where I found my voice. It's where I connected with my support system. It was all of that for me. It was my escape. It was my home. These teachers were my parents when I wasn't there. they were, I mean, I didn't have these experience with these awful educators that people often complain about. I really had a strong support system. If it had not been for them, I would not be able to have the degrees that I have and the education that I had. I mean, they came to my plays when my parents were able to get there. They made sure that I was, you know, eating and that I was active and that I was involved. And they were my support system. And without them, I don't think I would have. So that I guess my reason for staying in Oak Park is because I wanted my children to have those similar experiences. And I wanted my children to connect with educators. Like Anthony was my son's teacher, and Niall Collins' son was my son's teacher. And so I trusted these people with my children, and I knew that they were going to instill in them the same values that was instilled in me. And one thing that you're taught in Oak Park as a Husky is what? Those things that are great. And I felt like I was a part of that great tradition. I bought into the tradition of excellence in Oak Park, that we are excellent, that we strive for excellence. I bought in. And I brought my children in, that we bought in those things that are great. That's who we are. And that's who we should be as a community. We are great. We are excellent. We get to decide what kind of community we build. And that's what I hope to, you know, bring forth in this election, is that we get to decide what kind of community we build, those things that are great.
That's beautiful. And you've given me a great segue to the next question, which is, was there for each of you, and if there wasn't, you know, there wasn't, but was there an aha moment at all when you decided, I need to run for this trustee office? You know, was there a moment that it just hit you like, hey, I need to do this, or I want to do this, or I should do this?
I'm going to start. My aha moment, I remember exactly where I was. We were at the Black Lives Matter mural, and people were saying things like, you know, Oak Park used to be a sundown town, and they were saying all these things that are true. Let's own that those things are true. And at that moment, I was like, yes, we were all of those things. We were all of those things. But we have the power to move our community forward. And that's what we can't get trapped into what we were. We have to move the community forward. And whatever you don't like about Oak Park, you can change it. You can change as a resident. Going back to my original message, is that we can change it together. So we have to motivate each other and mobilize each other. It's what Anthony has been very effective in doing, is mobilizing people, mobilizing the community. If you can get people to clean up a block, if you can get people to march to Forest Park and protest, if you can get people to do all these sort of things, and we can get people to not to be inclusive, then we can get people to buy into inclusionary housing. We can get people to, you know, do all the things that we need in our village. We get to decide again. So at that moment, I spoke. Anthony was like, "Wante, you want to say something?" Like, you know, he does. So, and I'm like, I don't have anything to say, but I'm tired of people ragging on my town. And I don't like it when people, you know, shit on my town. Excuse me for swearing. I don't like that. So I speak up because I know what we are when we are great. I've seen us be great. And so then we have to change the narrative, and we have to do it as a community. So that was the moment where I decided, you know what? I don't know how to run for office. I've never done that before, but that's where I need to be. And so I'm just going to do it. And I told Anthony, hey, Anthony, let's run for office. He was like, go ahead, you do it. I was like, no, you do it with me. And so we started having that conversation. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this. We're definitely doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, you know, first and foremost, thank you so much, Wante, for choosing to run, making that decision. We truly appreciate it. And for me, it was actually Wante. You know, I got to keep it 100. Like my kids like to say, she called me. You know, for those who know a little bit about my history, you know, I ran at a congressional level twice, but I've always stated that, you know, anything that you want to change at a national level, or anything systemic that impacts on a national level, it always starts locally. And after my last congressional race, you know, I'll be honest with you, I was, you know, a little dejected, you know, in my feelings a little bit, because I was trying to just figure out my next path and figure out my next, you know, road, or, you know, in life, in my next direction, because in my mind, I felt like, again, I don't want to overgeneralize, I'm making an I statement, but I felt like so many individuals and people were choosing comfort over justice, in my estimation. And that doesn't mean choosing justice meant that you had the support of Anthony Clark or anything of that nature, but I just felt like, do we understand that we didn't get here by accident? Do we understand that an individual like Trump is a symptom? He is not a root cause issue. Individuals like myself, and I can't speak for them, but I'm going to say like Wanta and Chi, we've never had the opportunity to go to brunch. We've never had the opportunity to have coffee, no matter who's been in office, even Barack Obama, because of the systemic issues that are entrenched and interwoven into our society. But when Wanta called me and we started having a conversation, one, I was so extremely proud and happy that she chose to run because we need leaders like her in office. But two, the reason I decided to step up is because I know how it is to run for office when you're someone like myself, Wanta or Chi. It's brutal. You're going to get attacked. They're going to try to break you down. They want, not all individuals, but the opposition will want you to fail because individuals like us represent possible change. We represent progress and pushing for a difference. I think there's a clear difference, and I'm not mentioning this for anyone in particular, but there's a clear difference between managers and leaders. And I think when you have a level of privilege in your space, oftentimes you just want a manager because you want to maintain that privilege and you want to maintain that level of comfort. But in a community like Oak Park, we can no longer afford to maintain certain individuals' comfort, while in the meantime, the marginalized are uncomfortable. The marginalized don't have a voice and don't have a seat at the table. So when Wanta said she was running, and I'll wrap this up, I said, you know what? I'm not special, but I've been through it. And if I can step up and help support my sister in her race while we're both running for the same issues and for the same change, I could also serve as somewhat of a buffer because I'm used to being attacked. I'm used to being a target of so many different things because I hope individuals understand we represent movements. This is not about us. This is about a movement of change. But often what the opposition wants to do is they want to individualize it to further marginalize it and silence a movement. So instead of, saying it's a movement, they'll say, well, Wanta wants this, or Anthony wants this, or Chi wants this. And if we attack them and try to discredit them as individuals, then that movement is going to die out. But it's truly about a movement. It's truly bigger than any one individual. So as a collective, we are so strong. So that's why I chose to run, to get back into, because I knew, I had a purpose. I knew I wanted to change the community that I loved. And I wasn't going to sit back and allow Wanta, my sister, to go through this, knowing it was her first time ever running for office, knowing how brutal it can be. And I think we've seen that locally. I'm going to stand there right with her, and I'm going to fight with her. She's not going to fight by herself. And then, of course,
Chi. Thank you, bro. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. We ride or die. And you know that. And Chi as well. Chi reached out and we chose to do this together. And I'll be honest with you, and I ended here, and I don't want to get emotional, but with what we've experienced and gone through, I wouldn't be able to do this without my family. I wouldn't be able to do this without Wanta. I wouldn't be able to do this without Chi. I wouldn't be able to do this without Representative Oak Park, Mac, Bryn, Brian, and so Aaron, and so many other, Jacqueline, so many other wonderful individuals. They've helped me get through this, because it can be I say this and I'll end it. My quote is, when you rock the boat, you better be willing to swim, because when you try to push for change, somebody's either going to throw you overboard or try to sink the ship. So you better be willing to swim. So I just truly thank everyone that's in this fight for helping to throw me a life preserver and get me back on that boat. I truly appreciate it.
We got you, bro.
Yep.
Chi, do you mind if I call you Chi? Is that's
okay. Fine.
Okay.
That's my nickname for him, but you can take it, Steve.
If it's not okay, tell me.
No, man, it's completely fine.
You could say, no, you can call me Mr. Enya, though.
No, that's my dad. I love hearing this motivation. It always pushes me. I think, that's something that has always been inside of me. Is I always have had a fire and a passion to stand up, and that. When Wanta brings up Coach Collins, I call him Coach Collins because that's how I know him. He helped me to realize just how powerful I was, not as a physical person. My name is Chibike. It means God is powerful. And I think the first time I ever spoke, I let people know I thought it was a physical embodiment. That meant that I had to be super strong and I had to be this physical strength that my name carried. But I realized through people like Coach Collins, Coach Powell, the mentors that I had, the teachers, so many good teachers at OPRF that continuously told me I was more than just a name on a sheet or a kid in an AP class, that I could be more. And I was always challenged by them to push for harder. It was funny hearing, not funny, but coincidentally hearing Wanta talk about the Martin Luther King oratory contest. We had it in the 8th grade as well. And that's where I knew I had a talent for poetry. And the same thing, somebody pushed me to do it. And I think when you get pushed into those things, it's not because people are pushing you because they want to see if you could swim, but it's because they already know, they can already see it inside you that there's something that is untapped that needs to be tapped, and that is that's what I felt. A lot of this time growing up, I got the motivation from great mentors throughout Oak Park at so many different levels, whether it was church, whether it was school, whether it was sports, or whether it was just a randomness. I'm a listener, so I love to listen to people, whether it's a homeless person or it's, a teacher or whatever. I think everybody has something that they can offer to us to learn and to take in. So I've always done that. And what I learned throughout time was, in my family, we come from the Igbo tribe, and our tribe is a community. Where we lived, especially in the village we live, it's a community that comes together that shapes what that village is going to be. Everybody has an equal voice. You all are heard. The men wear these hats. They look kind of like Dr. Seuss hats, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The Igbo tribe, our men wear a specific hat and our women wear a specific jewelry. So that their voice carries weight and within the community, and every community member gets to say their piece. And what I really loved, what I've loved this whole time in Oak Park is this idea that we all can speak up and our voices can be heard as one. Mm-hmm. And so what I've been, treasured to hear is what our voices truly want. And what I was noticing throughout a lot of this last 4 years, especially, was that those weren't the voices of the ones who needed to be amplified. Those weren't our cries. Those weren't my pains that were being heard. And it felt like they were amplifying things that I didn't feel within me. And I knew that something had to change, because after seeing, so many people deal with so many issues throughout this country of the police brutality that was going on, I don't like to shield my kids. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old where I want them to understand about what's going on in this world. I don't want them to feel like, hey, I'm going to tell you that everything's great when it's not great, or I'm going to tell you that racism doesn't exist in this world when it does, when they've seen it firsthand. They always ask the questions, and so I feel like it's my duty to give them the true answers. So when I would hear and have to continuously tell them, hey, this was done because there's injustice in this world. This was done because there's no laws that stop, people from doing these type of things. This was done. And every time I kept saying, it's just because the right people aren't in office. It's just because the right people aren't there to speak up for these people. It's just because, and I kept saying, it's just because you're not doing enough. And that's what it came down to, because I couldn't tell my kids this anymore about not doing enough when we could be that embodiment. So I talked to Anthony and I talked to my cousin, and I was talking to both of them, trying to figure out what's the best thing that I can do. What can I do to help this community out? And they both gave me this, that there is this election that carries so much weight that you could be a positive influence if your heart's in the right place and you want to make change today. And that's what I took. I took it and I ran with it. And I was lucky enough to have mentors and leaders that helped me along through this path. And the great team that we have with, Brian, Matt, and Bryn, and Elle, and so many others that just put their time into making sure that this community is what we want it to be.
That's beautiful.
Can I just add one more thing before we go on to the next? Is that
Sure.
I think all of us Huskies here, that we were never told what we couldn't do. We were always told what we could do. We were always given, I don't know, that echoed with me and it resonated with me through high school, was that we were told that we could change the world, that we could do it. And we believed it, right? We didn't know that it meant just not in Oak Park. We didn't know that it meant there were positions that we couldn't fill in Oak Park. We believed that we could do anything. And so we have, and so we are. And if we can do them in our world, then we definitely can do them in our own town, our own village. So that glass ceiling, it never existed that I couldn't step into this role. I never thought that it would be something that I couldn't do and I wouldn't be welcomed into this role. I thought, surely my village will accept me. And I just thought, surely this could happen. I didn't realize that there would be forces against me.
Cool. Those of you watching and listening, and including the trustees, I encourage you to, it's Friday night, so if you, I'm having a little glass of wine, so I think it's worth relaxing, and enjoying this conversation, which I'm enjoying greatly. I want to try to channel as best I can, maybe some, I don't know, I'll call them elephants in the room for white people, something I know a little bit about, who might be watching tonight and thinking, I'm all about equity, and that's why I live in Oak Park, and I'm very supportive and very liberal, and I love the idea that there should be, we need Black representation as trustees, because it's been a while. Like I think it's the last elected trustees who were Black were elected back in 2013, so it's been a while. But there might be that little voice in the back of some people's head is like, well, that's, I think it's great, but I feel like I have to choose among the three of you because, there's, I mean, do we really have to have three Black folks on the, isn't that getting a little carried away here? Again, this is the little voice in the back of the head that I wonder. So, do you guys think about that? Do you because you guys are so supportive of each other, how do you address that, maybe that little voice in the back of white people's head? And I'm going to encourage everybody to answer. We have a number of questions we want to get to, and the time is flying by, so try to be as succinct as possible with this.
I'll go really quick.
Okay.
I even put a timer on, so we're good. So one thing I'll say is I went to Addis to get some coffee at the Addis Cafe on Oak Park Avenue on Saturday 2 weeks ago. And they were hosting some of our flyers. And one of the first things, I did was go get the turmeric tea, which I love. And while I was waiting in line, I was talking to Kelke for a minute, and I heard some gentlemen come in, and the first thing I heard them say was, 3 Black candidates, do we have to vote for each of them? If I don't vote for them, am I racist? And, my ears kind of perked up, and I wanted to say something right away. But one of the friends was like, hey, we don't know what their views are. We don't know, we don't know what their politics are. I'm waiting until I understand who these people are first before I vote. And I thought that if anything, that is what I want you to at least do. I don't say, hey, you have to vote for me because I'm Black and we deserve this right now. I want you to vote for me because I'm a strong candidate and I can do the job. I don't think that any 3 of us are underqualified. I think we all can fit the bill just right, but also we all offer something so unique and so authentic that it cannot be denied that we are strong candidates running for these positions. That's where I'll leave it at.
Yeah. I think this is such an important question because, again, I always say the issues that we face are interconnected. And one thing I want to quickly share is when we think about white supremacy, we have to think about it at an institutional level, not an individual level. White supremacy is systemic and it is institutional. That means it's interwoven into the foundation of America and American culture. So I've never been in a situation, or I've never necessarily heard, unless a company or organization is attempting to look at something through an equitable lens, which is not the norm, unfortunately, even in 2021. But I've never heard someone say, do I have to vote for all, white candidates? There's never been that fear or that perception that if I vote for white candidates, somehow they're not going to represent me, right? Because of course that's the majority. But what I want to share with people is that Black people are not a monolith. She and Wanta are different individuals. So while collectively we all are impacted by racism, we are still individuals and we still have our own individualized hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We don't always agree on everything. We have various policies that we would like to push forward. So there's diversity within the Black community. And we have to shift to narrative to understand that in this country, when you empower the groups and the individuals that have been marginalized systemically and silenced systemically, when you lift up the lowest within your society, that benefits everyone. That benefits everyone. We are not running simply to benefit Black folk in Oak Park and Black folk beyond this community. While yes, we want to empower Black individuals, people of color, and others marginalized, we care about the entire community of Oak Park. And we're running for the entire community of Oak Park. So we have to directly address that fear and those stigmas and those perceptions that exist, that somehow voting for Black candidates puts me at a disadvantage. When in actuality, again, we're not a monolith. Vote for us based upon who we are as individuals, while recognizing that us being Black has helped to impact who we are. And because of that, we have always had to fight. We have always had to speak up. And we have always had to not only represent ourselves, but represent others, because it's inherent. You cannot be a Black person or person of color in a predominantly white space and only care about Black people or persons of color. I cannot be a successful teacher that has lasted for 12 years only caring about Black students and Black issues. I care about humanity and I care about the human being. And I'll end it with race is a social construct anyway. That was designed to, I'm not gonna let me stop. You know how I do. I get on this soapbox, but I just want to tell people that understand that Black people are not a monolith. We are here because we care about humanity. We are here because we care about the entire community. And when you uplift those at the bottom that are marginalized, you're uplifting everyone and everyone benefits.
Yeah. So I think Anthony and Chibuike have said it all basically, is that no, we don't ever ask why are there all these white folks, and how many white people can we elect? We only do that when there are Black and brown people running for anything, that we have to have a certain number. Like in elementary school, if there were 5 Black children, you'd put 1 in each classroom to show that you had diversity. Remember that being a thing? They would never put all the Black kids in one classroom because everybody has to have at least one. And that's how diversity is often viewed in Oak Park, as scattering us. But I think that what's the fear, like what's underneath the fear? And I think that statement says more about what has been at the board table than what will be at the board table. Because people have often been making policies and decisions based on their demographic, based on making sure that those people are succeeding. And I think the fear is that we'll do the same. And so the fear is that Black candidates will come in there and do what's been being done for several years. And it's just that I don't think that we're not a monolith, but what I know about Black folk, because I've been Black all my life, is that we don't move that way. We don't do that way. When white people are being kicked out of their families and being disowned, Black folk take them in. I mean, we look at the whole community. We are a giving, nurturing, and very accepting people. And I don't think that we get enough credit for being people who look after everyone. We take the fall for everyone. The civil rights movement, we took it for everyone. My people died for everyone. And we have been doing that. So by electing Black candidates, you're not electing someone who's just going to look after Black folk. we want our whole community to thrive. We want everyone to be lifted up. And I think that's what we've done throughout the history of this country in elected spaces and in positions of Black leadership, is that we've often looked after everyone.
So, you know, the one thing that's been true, very, very, very true recently, you know, on the trustee board, is there's been a lot of acrimony, and there's been a lot of, and you know, again, I'm trying to speak to what I think could be a back of the mind thing. It's like, okay, well, you guys joined this board. It's just going to be a free for all about equity in this community, because that's, you know, that's been at the heart of a lot of the debate that's been going on right recently in this community at that board level. So what do you say to that? And I'm thinking in particular, I mean, I think all of you want you to answer lightning round, quick. But Anthony, I'm thinking you particularly, because I think there are probably a number of people, white people in the community, that think, oh, you know, this guy, you know, he's such an activist. He's so outspoken. Do we really need that kind of, you know, guy in a situation that's already very volatile and fraught?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, you know, to step back in a minute. And while I'm going to bring this individual up, I am in no way bringing this individual up to say that we are on his level or anyone's level. But if we think about when Martin Luther King was alive, prior to his assassination, when he was about to lead a worker strike, there was a poll that came out nationally, and he was one of the most hated individuals in the country. And that's by liberals, conservatives, moderates, so on and so forth, because again, he had his finger on change. So when you're pushing for change, it's inevitable that individuals are going to become uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, that's often attached to fear. But if individuals have an opportunity to truly step back, and again, this is beyond just Anthony Clark, because this is a we movement, what have we really been doing in this community? We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to help people in need, to help businesses in need. We're about to come out with a community fridge tomorrow at Carnival. We've helped small business. Like, what has Suburban Unity, like, we helped change the racial equity policy, sexual assault policy. So what is negative and scary about creating greater equity? Because again, oftentimes when some individuals, not all, but equity oftentimes feels like oppression for individuals that have privilege, because equity means that you might not necessarily have as big a slice as you do, because we're trying to empower and uplift others. So that's what I've been involved in a collective movement. So I do still to this day sometimes step back, and I get it, but I wonder, do people really want to get to know who I am, get to know who she is, get to know who Wanta is? Or do they fall into those tropes that have existed throughout history? The Judas and the Black Messiah just came out with Chairman Fred Hampton, who was from Maywood, because he was pushing for change in an intersectional movement, which involved poor whites and poor Puerto Rican individuals, not just Black issues, because of the economy and the issues that exist. What happened to him? He was assassinated. He was labeled a communist. He was labeled all these various labels that get put out due to fear. So I challenge people to step back for a second and truly look at what we're attempting to do. We're attempting to improve this entire community. And if you're afraid of that, sometimes you have to look into the mirror and ask yourself, why? Why am I so defensive? Why am I so reactive when all they're simply trying to do is empower those that have been voiceless, that I've benefited from them being voiceless? So that's what I have to say about that. Get to know me. Whether you vote for me or not, I still challenge yourself. Get to know me. Get to know the movement. Get to know Chi. Get to know Wanta. Don't just simply go off what you hear in the press or what you hear on social media, because it's by design. If you truly understand our history, and I'm sorry, this was lightning round, I'm going to end here. Right. Labels and brands have been, because this is huge, but labels and brands have been utilized throughout history to attack people and silence change. And I'll leave it there. I'm sorry.
Well, let me, before you guys add on, let me just say one thing. It's like, it does seem to me, at least from what I read about these debates at the trustee, meetings, is that the one thing it's not been informed by is people of color, really. And so there's been some very heartfelt debate and conflict, but it hasn't been informed, which is not to say the people who are not informed people. I'm not saying that, but it hasn't been informed by people from the community who this most directly impacts, it seems to me. So, but who wants to go next? Lightning round.
Sorry.
You want me to go? No, go, Chiba, you can go because I know your lightning is a little slower than most. Go ahead.
His lightning be like,
Max says just leave me whatever's time. I get whatever's left over in time. So
Go ahead.
go with the question again. I heard a lot, so I want to make sure I'm answering this properly.
Just that people who are looking at that what's been going on at the trustee meetings and the sort of acrimony and debate around equity, and thinking, oh my God, do we really want to make that even possibly, if we have all these Black trustees, is that just going to just make it an even more impossible situation to deal with at the trustee level? Do we, what are you guys going to bring to that equation?
Yeah. So let me make sure I start this.
start it.
So what I like to say, when it does come to equity, is it's hard to have people tell you what equity needs to be when they are not the ones who are affected by this. They can tell you that they're an expert and that they've gone to classes and taken lessons and done whatever, but that doesn't truly mean you understand what it means to be impoverished or to be someone who's struggling just to make ends meet, to live within Oak Park, very similar to what all three of our parents had to do to stay here. Hearing the discrimination that my dad had to go through to pay over $10,000 what the normal average was to get a home to put as a down payment. The fact that he had to continuously, he got a $7,000 back from the lender who said that they used discriminatory practices against my father, and are now just paying them back for it. So there is so much inequity within Oak Park that people who are sitting at the board have no idea about. They haven't had to live through that. They haven't had to understand what it is to be paycheck to paycheck. So it truly means the three of us do not only understand what that means, but we're not here to necessarily change the whole world in one day. It can't happen like that. This takes time. This takes collaboration. This takes a lot of effort from intergovernmental collaboration, not just within the village. And equity doesn't mean that things are going to get worse for everybody else not involved. That means that this becomes an even playing field. This becomes something where power is distributed, not to be hoarded. And I didn't know that, in Oak Park, that we were supposed to be wielding power in these positions. We were supposed to be making Oak Park a better place. And that's what I think of when I think of the equity here. That's not what we're not here to make things worse for everyone. We only want to make this a better livable situation for those who have been most marginalized and had the smallest voice of amplification. So like Anthony, I don't believe that equity will drown out what needs to happen here. There's a lot of change that needs to happen, and we all have a part to play within that. Excellent.
Hey, I think his lightning was pretty good there. All right, so we're going to go to some questions coming in from you folks watching, which we greatly appreciate. I'm looking at the chat to pick one out here.
It's on the screen for you. Just
there it is.
Alice Cottingham.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Great job.
From Alice Cottingham. Yes. Which of the candidates for village president do you think you'd work better with, and why? Do you want to go there?
Wanta, you got something?
I think we've all kind of avoided this because for whatever reason, is that each of the candidates, I think both of them are great. I think both of them are good people. I mean, I've worked with Kate Moore. I've worked in the community. I've worked with Kate on everything that I've ever tried to do. Kwanzaa, the Tea Party, Breakfast at Breakthrough, everything. Kate's been there to say, what can I do? How can I help? She comes early, she stays late. So my experience has been with Kate Redling. She has been the one who's, I mean, she's my friend. She's been there. I mean, we've done everything together. All the work, all the grassroots stuff that I've done it with Kate. Now, that's not to say that Vicky would not be a good leader. I just don't have the benefit of knowing her as well as I know Kate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I want to echo, you know, Wanta's sentiments. You know, I think Kate and Vicky, for what I know about both of them, they're two great individuals. I believe that no matter who wins, they're definitely going to be a better village president than our current. I'm just going to keep it 100. We're definitely going to progress and move forward as a community because I think we're regressive right now in our leadership. You know, we're oppressive right now in our leadership. So whether Kate or Vicky wins, we're definitely moving forward in reference to who our village president is. You know, so that's important. So for me, it was more so, you know, I've had experiences with Kate. You know, I'm always in the community. You know, Kate has supported various, you know, because we work together on Kwanzaa. I support Wanta with that, Juneteenth, so on and so forth. And I've also had experiences with Vicky, you know, going into the city, various protests and things of that nature. So for me, even removing myself from that candidate position, I'm a community member as well. So I'm looking to see, okay, who separates themselves in a sense, you know, with various forms and, you know, their policy points and positions, because I do feel like each will be better. But I just wanted to step back and be a citizen, a community member. And at this point, I've yet to make a decision, to be honest with you. But either way, I feel like we're going to be better off as a community, whether Kate or Vicky wins.
Chi?
I thought if I was quiet, you guys wouldn't remember it was my turn.
You know, everybody doesn't have to answer every question.
No.
That's you know.
Start the timer, Chi.
So yeah, very similar to both of them. I know both of these ladies, but I've known Kate for a longer period of time. We actually go to the same church. She was the first person that introduced herself to me. She is one of the most welcoming people. She kind of embodies what you think Oak Park is when you think of what it's supposed to be. She's the welcoming neighbor, the one who wants you to feel like this is a place for you. And she did that for me. And it, you know, just the stuff that she does behind the scenes is it's incredible. And at first, if you had asked me this question a long time ago, I would have said hands down, I know what I'm going to do. But I've had the opportunity as well to hear from my elders. I believe very strongly in listening to our seniors and understanding where they come from and their views. And so I listened to my seniors, and they told me, you know, you need to actually understand what Vicky does in this community and outside of this community. And I got to understand the work that she does with Yemba. I got to understand the work that she's done for crime, for the work that she's done for youth intervention. So it can't go unnoticed that she does a lot of work, and it's near and dear to her as well. And it's hard to, you know, put apples to apples when both of them work extremely hard at what they do. So I'll leave it at it's very similar to Anthony. I haven't made it. I need to see policy now, because I feel confident that either one of them could take this role and do an amazing job at being a village president. And like Anthony said, they would both be hands down better than what we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. So that's where I'll leave it at. I don't know what I've chosen yet, but I think they're both very capable.
All right. Excellent. So here's a excellent question, I think. How will each of you plan to handle pushback as you move forward with any work that may not be easy for some Oak Parkers to understand or support?
I'll be quick. You know, for me, everything has to be steeped in education. As a teacher, it's important to make informed decisions. And I think too often, based upon, you know, personal aspirations or so on and so forth, we often present policies or initiatives or ideas. One, you know, please take a look at our community engagement, you know, policy. But we often do this as leaders without engaging the community, without truly empowering the community and providing diverse seats at the table in a round table, not, you know, a horizontal table where there's a leader at the forefront. This is a round Gnostic table because everyone is a leader in this community and everyone has a perspective that is valued. So I think that's what's been impacting, the community to date. So when we engage in a true intercommunity and intergovernmental effort to empower everyone in the community moving forward, building empathy for others, as well as investing in education, then we can get to a point to whatever decision you make, it could be a respected decision and it could be a decision that you feel comfortable with, if that makes sense. Because we're not representing ourselves, we have to engage in that intercommunity and intergovernmental efforts, because I can't just make a decision for Anthony and for what Anthony wants. I have to make a decision for what's best for the collective of Oak Park as a community moving forward. But it has to start with education. And I'll just end it with, I think we see that come to fruition, the lack of education in reference to the defund, the non-binding referendum defund question that's upcoming. With lack of investment in the community, it divides the community instead of bringing the community together with educational investment, no matter what individuals within the community end up deciding to do, if that makes sense.
Anybody want to add anything, or should we move on to the next one?
We can move on.
Move on.
TB.
Okay. How can we stay economically viable while moving forward with a progressive platform? And I think this is a really good one because, when you look at everybody's talking about, trying to rein in taxes and all of this stuff. And I think there is this kind of fundamental fear that making Oak Park or any community more progressive and more inclusive costs money. And so it's just going to make it more expensive. And when you consider that coupled with the fact that Oak Park is becoming a more expensive place to live, period. So I think people of color in general face some real struggles staying in this community, whether they be renters or buyers. So dig into this a little bit. And, again, the shorter the answer, the better, because we can just get to more before we have to close this out. But again, so yeah, how do you remain economically viable while moving forward with a progressive agenda?
So is it okay if I start, guys?
Yeah.
I think, hold on, let me start this timer. So I think one of the main things we have to remember in order to stay economically viable is we have to diversify our tax base. And that's been a struggle in Oak Park for the 30 years that I've lived here. And it's probably been even longer, Steve. You've been here, Steve, longer than I have. So I'm sure you've seen, the Winberries, the bread shops on Oak Park Avenue. So many different places have come in and out. And we have not offered the small business support that you would think a town like Oak Park would have in place in order to make sure that we are successful in diversifying that tax base and not pressing this all solely on our residents. So there has to be a strong commitment and focus, not only from the village board, but from all the other taxing bodies to say, how can we work together to make this a place that is more welcoming to small businesses where they can thrive, not just barely make it here. And there's so many other small businesses that are just in people's homes. I have a small business that I run from my home. So I think that if we start to think of these things and put it top of mind, there will be a way for us to thrive economically. We've already seen that through the cannabis tax. You are seeing from that 3%, $35,000 a month in revenue from one cannabis store. So that gets the wheels turning for innovation and thought. And now we can have deeper conversation in our community platform to see what do we want to bring and attract to Oak Park so that we can continue to bring in revenue and make Oak Park more economically viable. I'll leave it there.
Good job.
Anybody want to add, or we move on?
Wonton, you jumping in?
Go ahead with the.
Can I just say something real quick? I swear to God, it's going to be 10 seconds. I think it becomes more expensive when we're consistently hiring leaders that are not steeped in equity. When they're starting behind the curve when it comes to equity, that's when it often costs more. But when you invest in and vote for leaders that are already invested in the work and get the work, you're starting at an advantage. I just want to point that out.
Great. Wanta, you want to add anything, or are we moving on?
We're moving on.
Okay, can we realistically change the parking situation so that it doesn't feel so predatory? Wanta, why don't you jump on that one to begin?
I knew it was going to be my turn at some point. So understanding that the parking situation is an example of a regressive tax, and that the bulk of these expenditures come at the cost of the 41% of renters in our community. It's not something that we can debate on anymore. It's something that has to happen. We definitely have to eliminate this sort of this overnight parking ban. We can do it with that. We can because people have to have somewhere to park, and I think we've been using this at the expense of people. That we've all wanted to be very comfortable in our Oak Park and being able to see our trees and everything at the expense of our third and second shift people coming home from work without having a place to park. And also, there has to be some sort of limit or some sort of, we have to say it's enough, and we have to be more creative in ways to create revenue in our town that's not at the expense of renters, that's not at the expense of the people who are in need of parking and in need of, we have to look out for the least of us in our town. And so as a renter on Austin, I remember having to park my car on Mason in Chicago. So I would come home from work and park my car on Mason and walk 2 blocks over to Oak Park because there was no parking available in my neighborhood. So that definitely has to change. Not only that, it's just not safe, walking 2 blocks at night coming home from work. And so it's a safety issue, it's an equity issue, and it's a sort of a racist thing that we've been doing in our village, and people are accepting it because most people, the other side has garages.
Before we move on to the next question, I want to just do a quick follow-up with Wanta. I remember when you and I talked last week or whenever it was, I made a point of bragging about the fact that when we first moved to Oak Park, we went to the housing center and we ended up, renting a place at Lombard in Washington, and you nicely pointed out to me that it's a different experience for someone like me coming into the community and renting. And it's true because within a couple of years, we'd moved on to buy our first house for a lot cheaper than what you can buy a house now. But, you've made a point in your campaign of talking about because you're a renter, you can speak to these issues. And I think a lot of people have this impression that housing center is such a crown jewel of Oak Park and that they provide everything that people who rent in Oak Park, including many people of color, that we got that covered. So why would we want or need someone like you to represent that constituency, especially when there are also people who are renters and not homeowners in this community?
Absolutely. Well, I think 50 years ago, we were leading that charge, right? We were leading the charge in integration, and we're doing great things with the housing center. And I think now that there's a different form of blockbusting, there's a different form of redlining, and it comes in the form of people saying things like you have to spend $60 per adult person in your home in order to have your renter application form looked at. Well, that in my case, that would be $240 just to have an application for an apartment viewed. Also, that you have to have a 720 credit score to have an apartment. You have to make 3 to 5 times more than the rent to get an apartment. So if an apartment is like 1975, I would have had to make $5,385 by myself to get an apartment in Oak Park. It's just these sort of stipulations that they're putting on renters now. It's just a new barrier, a new way of discriminating against certain people. So we're moving these people and pushing them towards Austin. We're pushing them towards the outskirts of Oak Park, but we're not integrating places like Grove and Kenilworth and East. So it's a new form of redlining and blockbusting. So we need our housing center to go in there to these apartments with these people to create relationships with the owners in Oak Park, and to get rid of some of the barriers that exist for renters. So we need them to like update what they've been doing. So now it's not, it looks different. When my parents moved here, my father's from Chiang Mai, Thailand. My mother's Black. And when they moved here, my mother would send my father to look for an apartment because they would tell him yes and tell her no. And so when she showed up, they would say, oh, there's been some mistake. That apartment has already been rented. So it's not that blatant anymore. It's more subtle now. And because it's more subtle, we need the housing department to step up and say, what are the barriers now? If the barrier is credit issues, then we could create credit programs to help renters and residents with credit. If the barrier is, I don't know, income or home ownership, then we can come up with home ownership programs for renters, because we do have people who need those programs within our village, and they're offered in Austin, they're offered in Lawndale, they're offered in East Garfield Park, but we don't have those programs in Oak Park. And Oak Park resources, Oak Park money is funding programs that often Oak Parkers don't get to benefit from. And I think we need to change that narrative that there are not poor people in Oak Park, or there are people who are in need of these services in Oak Park, because I was that person in need of those services. Just last year, I made $7,000 a year. That was my annual income. My husband is a Catholic school teacher, and we survived off maybe $56,000 a year with a family of 6. And we did so not on any kind of rental assistance program, but by budgeting the hell out of the money that we did have. And so I think that when people say, well, these type of people don't live in our village, they're absolutely out of touch, because we did it and we survived. My mother, we survived on $20,000 a year. My dad owned the Greasy Spoon in K-Town. And so we just gotta bring the housing center up to the 2020 form of racism and discrimination and barriers, and help those renters navigate those waters and kick down those barriers. And we can do so with innovative programming.
That's great. This is a related question for any one of you, which is, one of the viewers says, here it is. We've lost over 1,500 of our Black neighbors since 2016 because of housing affordability. So moving on from renting to housing, what would you do to change this? Who wants to jump on that one?
She, you want to go first?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I didn't start the clock yet. So what I'll say, that's what scares me, and what I've noticed over time. So growing up on the north side of Oak Park, I lived on Lombard. My parents still live there, and a lot of my friends were on Austin. And what I've noticed throughout time is that they all moved out, and they're all gone. And it saddens me, because I wish that when I came back, that there would be some more of my childhood friends here, but they know this reality of how expensive Oak Park is. And that's what you're seeing in these numbers. And you're seeing not only the flight in numbers from Oak Park, but from Illinois in general. There's an exodus, and there is so much work that can be done, but there has to be leadership that is focused on bringing this to the forefront. When we say that, we are entrenched in equity work, this is part of the work. This is part of figuring out how can we work together as a community to make this a place where we can age in place. And there are ways of doing this, but it's going to be very, very hard, collaborative, and long conversations, because it isn't just something that just the village board can work on. But yes, we will be responsible for policy making, but it's going to be working with policy at a state level as well to figure out what programs are we not taking advantage of that we could be taking advantage of. These dollars that are coming in now from pandemic relief, how can we put this into home ownership? The dollars that we're getting whenever we do a big development, how are we making sure that we are taxing these developers at a higher level than just 10%? It needs to be higher so that we don't see more of our neighbors disappear. there should be assistance for those who need the help when they really do need it, because there are people who take advantage of programs because they know it's there and they know that they know how to work around the system. But let's make this system work for people who need it most. I'll leave it there.
Anthony, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, she handled it beautifully. One thing I'll just add to it is, also what he mentioned earlier, we have to diversify our revenue. Evanston, for example, with their reparations plan, they're tapping into cannabis revenue to help support, Black homeowners and Black renters in their community to help address the lack of affordability issue that exists. And the last thing I'll say, this is an interconnected issue. As Wanta was stating, as a renter, the lack of affordability just isn't about rent or mortgage. It's also about parking fines, parking fees. It's also about transportation or lack thereof. It's also about being able to buy groceries and so on and so forth. So it's all interconnected and leads to a greater lack of affordability in our community. And we have an opportunity as a home rule community to address these issues creatively.
Excellent. So we're winding down here. I want to give each of you a chance. I think it's going to be 3 minutes each. So set your timer, Chi. To talk about, give a statement about why you, why now, why this position, and I think one of those questions in the back of some people's minds might be, well, they're not lawyers, okay? They're not. They haven't run big organizations. Although Anthony, you've been running. I don't know how big Suburban Unity is, but you're certainly running organizations while teaching. I know all of you have been very active in so many ways, but why you guys versus the usual sort of profile of people who do this kind of work?
I'll jump in real quick. One of my favorite movies is The Usual Suspects, and so shout out to that film. But The Usual Suspects is what's gotten us to this point. The Usual Suspects is what's gotten us to 2021, to where individuals are desperate and struggling to survive. And they're essentially that old saying of robbing Peter to pay Paul. They have to decide between purchasing groceries or paying rent or paying a mortgage. They have to decide if going to work or having to stay home due to the pandemic to help with their children, so on and so forth. So we're in the situations we're in because of the usual suspects. We have to change the narrative that exists in our communities. She said earlier that I came out with a cape. And one of my favorite sayings of all times is from Martin Luther King. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. So why not now and why not us? Because we're experts. An expert doesn't have to be someone with a master's degree, even though I do have 4 of them, just a shout out. And thanks to Ron and Blanche Clark for pushing Anthony through school. But that's not about that. It's not about a certain title or having a doctor in front of your name. True leadership and true movement moving forward has to do with who's involved in this community, who's been involved in empowering and giving and providing seats at this table and truly understands equity work. So why not us? It is time to change the narrative. It is time to change status quo, and we have to go in a different direction and should not be afraid to go in a different direction. So when we're talking about sustainability, economically, socially, environmentally, with a focus and a lens on equity, these are the candidates that are going to make it happen. This is the movement that's going to make it happen. So now is the time, because as adults, we have failed our children. This is on us. We are where we are in 2021. Trump was in office. Domestic terrorists were storming the Capitol because of the usual suspects. So let's change that narrative.
I guess I'll go next since we lost.
She was
like, why me? Why now? So why me? Because we've had so many people run for office, and the first thing they say is, I'm going to be about change. I'm going to bring change, and I'm going to support those who are disproportionately affected by, racism. I want to be the voice. Well, I'm those people that they're talking about, that they're bringing change to. So if you say you want change, you want to help those people, and then when those people show up to help themselves, you say, oh, no, I got this. I'll fight for you. We can't continue to silence the people who want to fight for themselves. I'm showing up because I am a renter. I am disabled. I am a woman. I am Black. I'm from here. I'm all the things that I'm the person that you say you're fighting for. Let me fight for myself. Let me let me identify the issues that affect the people who are with me, who I've struggled with. I know where the holes are, so I'm best suited to fill them. So I think that we need to start. We need to do something different. As Anthony said, we've done the usual suspects. We've done the lawyers. We've done the consultants. We've let them lead, and it's gotten us to where we are right now. So now we have to do something different. We have to make sure that we're not just fighting for people who are disproportionately affected by systemic oppression and racism, but now we have to let the people who are affected by it to speak for themselves. We don't need white saviors. We don't need people coming to the rescue. We can fight for ourselves, and in fighting for ourselves and in fighting for equity, we're fighting for the soul of Oak Park. We're making true what we say. We say we value diversity. We say we value inclusion. We say that we're a multicultural village. Well, then we have to walk that talk and make it so. And so by me just being here, I don't have 4 master's degrees, but I've got 1. I mean, I've done this work. You know, it's not like I'm someone who's not capable. You know, we're not just having people off the street said, hey, come sit at the board table. We have educated, qualified candidates, and we're telling them, no, not you, no, not now. Yes, now. It's time.
Man, it's hard to follow these two up. So what I'll, start off saying is when I was younger, I did Boy Scouts in Oak Park, and I used to think that, you'd get the affirmation by getting all the Boy Scout awards, and I'd get all the patches, and I'd be the top Boy Scout, and I'd outsell all the kids in popcorn. And largely a lot of those times, like, I didn't have my parents involved because they were always working so hard, but I always wanted to show them that I always did my best whenever I got out, and that I represented them as best I possibly could. And my parents said, it's not about the awards. It's not about that. It's that you actually care about what you're doing. And my dad would see the book and he'd say, did you do this one with the seniors? Did you do this one here? Did you do this project? Because he knew that it wasn't about the glamour of, becoming an Eagle Scout, that it was the lessons that you learned along the way and how you were able to bring that back to your community. And even in life, I sometimes miss that message. I would think at my jobs that I had to be the best person at my job all the time. And I was bringing out these awards and all this stuff that I would win all the time, thinking, hey, I got the top award at my company. Like, I won this. But that never brought me any joy. The joy that I had was when we would go back and do these service projects, when we go back and do Habitat for Humanity and build a home for somebody, when we would go to pads and we would actually fill up food for people. And then I'd talk to the homeless people after this and see, how could I help this person more than just what I'm doing? And when we can think about leaders that are actually going to lead and that are going to take charge and show people how to be a better person for themselves to affect their community, then we'll know that change is really going to happen here. One thing, I have this list. So I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a mentor, I'm a leader, I'm a coach, I'm a manager. I do all these things, but at the end of the day, I keep coming back to this. It's not all those things. It's at the end of the day, how do I inspire those around me? How am I inspiring my kid? How am I inspiring my wife? What am I doing to make this, to be the best person I can for the community of Oak Park? And I keep reading this over and over. Thinking about Anthony in the Superman costume is Superman didn't ever have any awards. Do you remember Superman ever having anything saying like, I did this, I saved the world this many times? No, Superman just did it. Superwoman just does it. They just do those things. That's what Wansa and Anthony do. Myself, I just try to follow in the footsteps of people that I know inspire me to want to be a better person. And I hope that with this village board job or trustee position, that we can inspire people to be better Oak Parkers, to want to inspire to make a change within this community.
That's great. Well, we have to wrap up. I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Steve, so much.
Yeah. My pleasure and
Thank you.
honor. It strikes me, a couple of things strike me as we close out. One is that, I think a lot of times people, run for these kinds of offices because they've been very successful, and this is their way of giving back, is to be a trustee or to be a school board member. And it strikes me that with the three of you, it's like this has been part of your DNA for a very long time, is to give, that's just who you are. This is not the thing that you're doing to supplement a different life. It is fundamentally who you are. It's in your DNA. And so I really love that about you and respect that greatly. The other thing that really stands out to me is that the three of you have such profound sort of affection and respect for each other. So I'm trying to envision all three of you on the board, and it just seems like that would be a great process, and a great addition to that board. So for those of you who are watching tonight, I think everyone would welcome donations. Am I wrong about that? Donations are good.
We won't turn them down.
They won't turn them down. But also, maybe even more importantly, is to spread the word to your neighbors, to your friends, to the people who didn't tune in.
Definitely. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations.
And get the word out and talk about this election and talk about these candidates and talk about all the candidates. And so, anyway, thank you everyone who watched tonight for all the great questions, for your attention on a Friday night, and thank you guys for being a part of this. And
shout out to Maui. Thank you, Maui.
And shout out to everyone who pulled this thing together, and have a great weekend and a great election day. Let's hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.